The following podcast is recorded and produced by Emerge, a media creators co-op.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Defion Productions podcast. I'm your host, the hardest working nobody in Bitcoin, Don. And boy, do we got a spicy podcast today to talk about. A lot of things going on in the Twitterverse. Most of it not necessarily Bitcoin related, but definitely finance related. Definitely gets into some of my core beliefs, which led me to Bitcoin. So we're going to talk about all those things today. You can kind of see in the header, it's going to be the student loan stuff and all that stuff that's going on in Minnesota. And we're going to talk about taxes and taxation. Starting with the charts, we got Bitcoin currently sitting at 87,119. We got Ethereum sitting at 2,900. Total market cap at 2.96. Going down to some of these other altcoins, looks like XRP's at $1.84, Solana 123. Everything's kind of where it's been. We did have a little bit of a spike Sunday night. We got to 90K last night, and then had a dip like we've been having over the weekends. It's a lot of manipulation. Fear and greed's at 30. Silver had a run last night to a new all-time high of like $84, and then this morning dropped like an absolute knife to, I think I saw 71. Not sure where it's sitting now, but that lot of weird market action. Stocks, equities were down today when I looked earlier around lunchtime. So just a lot of weird price action stuff going on. Let's get right into my first topic that I want to talk about, and it specifically has to do with student loans. A couple of days ago, actually almost a week ago, it was announced that President Trump would potentially sign something where wage garnishment for student loans would start in January. The Trump administration plans to begin garnishing wages of student loan borrowers in default in January. There's going to be court cases that are going to revolve around if he can do that or not, if that's constitutional or not. The same way as when Biden said he was going to eliminate everybody's student loans. It got tied up in the courts and eventually wasn't able to do it. But it's out there for people to see. So it got me involved in this Facebook post, and I was going back and forth with a lot of people talking about specifically how loans are created and how it expands the money supply, and the fact that it's not actually taxpayer money that's loaned out when student loans are created. And unfortunately, many people in the population have absolutely no clue how loans originate, how the money supply expands, and therefore they believe that every single loan that's given out is their money in the bank, or student loans are quote-unquote taxpayer money. I'll get into a little bit of this back and forth in this thread, and then I'll show you factual information to back up everything that I'm saying with these individuals. So the post that kind of triggered me to get involved into this thread, this individual put, it's in the word loan, and then she put loan, noun, a thing that is borrowed, especially a sum of money that is expected to be paid back with interest. So my response to her was, do you understand how the government creates money? The money never existed prior to being loaned. The loan is a way for money supply expansion, which then ultimately leads to higher prices of goods and services perpetually. What baffles me is all the people screaming about paying back student loans and blaming borrowers don't have the first clue how money creation happens through fractional reserve banking and QE by the Fed. People are choosing the wrong things to be upset about in our financial system. So this individual that I responded to apparently is an accountant, because she told me so. I am an accountant. I understand loans and how they work. A loan is a loan. You want to borrow it, then pay it back regardless. That is how it works. That's why it's called a loan, not a handout. And the person is called a borrower. That was her response. So I, politely responded to that, saying, fractional reserve banking, which is how banks create money, the government has to use financial institutions to create the funds to send out. Tax receipts don't even cover the annual budget, which currently is at a $2 trillion plus annual shortfall. So taxes are not being loaned out. QE, quantitative easing, how the government creates, using the Fed and treasuries, expands the supply through those measures as well. The main point being money supply expansion by creating new money. The loan doesn't exist until the borrower requests the funds. The people so upset about paying loans back or not don't realize the real harm happens at loan creation when the money supply expands. Continuous, endless supply of money, endless inflation of the money supply, endless cycle of prices of goods and services rising, which has been far outpacing wage growth. Tired of the uneducated takes on attacking people who take loans or pay loans, etc. People should learn about how things work. Maybe we could actually unite to effectively change the systems if people were more interested in facts than leading with emotions based on false narratives. So I came for the jugular. Here is, if you Google, how do loans increase the money supply? So this isn't Don, podcaster, just making up shit. Just saying that, it's not taxpayer money that's being loaned out. You can actually look this up if you care to have a genuine discourse with somebody before you start yelling that somebody borrowing loans should pay back the loans. Here's the AI overview of loan origination. Not my words. This is when you punch it into AI. Loans increase the money supply through a process called fractional reserve banking, where commercial banks essentially create new money in the form of bank deposits when they issue a loan. This process is often explained using the concept of the money multiplier. The mechanism of money creation. Step 1, deposits and reserves. When an individual deposits money into a bank, the bank's total reserves increase. The bank is required to keep a fraction of this deposit as required reserves, either in its vault or an account at the central bank. For context, in 2020 during COVID, the percentage was actually 0. They were required to keep nothing on reserve during COVID for a couple of years. 2, lending excess reserves. The funds not kept as required reserves are called excess reserves, which the bank can lend to borrowers to earn a profit through interest, which ends up being somewhere between 5 to 10% of the total 100% that they take in as bank deposits. Creating new money. When a bank grants a loan, it does not physically, this is very important for the conversation. I'll start again. When a bank grants a loan, it does not physically hand out existing cash or lend directly from another customer's deposits. Instead, it creates a new demand deposit, a checking account balance in the borrower's name. This newly created deposit is new money that did not exist before the loan was made. That's very important, because student loans are in the same realm of how money is lent in a bank, because a bank is the federal government is not a bank. They need to use banks to send out the money to deposit the people that actually, or to credit the deposit accounts of people that are getting these loans and sending them to universities. So they have to use the banks. And the banks are creating money that did not exist prior to that and sending it to those institutions. So the complete and utter fallacy that people on social media are yelling and screaming that you borrowed money and you should pay it back and you're taking taxpayer money and the taxpayer's got to bail you out. It's like, no, none of that is true. Actually, absolutely none of that is true. No taxpayers were harmed in the creation of student loans. So no taxpayer money is actually being lent out. It's actually numbers on a digit screen that are being created out of thin air and sent out to borrowers. Full stop. 100% fact. Number 4, the multiplier effect. The borrower spends this new money, which is then deposited into a different bank or potentially the same one by the recipient. That second bank then keeps a fraction as required reserves and loans out the remainder of the new money, and the process repeats. This cycle, through multiple banks, results in a multiple expansion of the initial deposit's impact on the money supply. So when a student loan is created and it's put into a bank account by the university that gets that money's actually multiplying out in the system. So when you're upset that somebody defaults on their student loan and you think that taxpayers are getting screwed or got to bail it out, absolutely none of that is true. And I'm so tired of people with their half-ass takes on social media screaming at people that are barely surviving in this economy about paying back their student loans. Not to mention the fact of how predatory student loans are to begin with. The fact that Generation X my generation, was born in a time where we were told that you had to go to college, which made colleges, universities, professors insane amounts of money. In 1996, when I graduated high school, I believe it's like 8 times more expensive to go to college than it was back when I graduated high school. So people made insane amounts of money that was created out of thin air that people are screaming on social media needs to be paid back. Meanwhile, in the last 30 years, more specifically in the last 5, inflation has just completely outpaced wage growth. And you have people that are having these absolutely asinine takes, screaming at people to pay back these student loans where they can barely afford groceries, barely afford their rent or their mortgage and their car loan. And then you want them to add this extra payment on to their liabilities. And what do you think is going to happen to the economy, genius? Like these idiots in these threads that are screaming, oh, it's a loan, you must borrow the loan back. Let me ask a question to the viewers out there. Let me ask you a question. I want you to think about this. I want you to really ponder this because it's really important. Why is it that if you stop paying a bill, like you don't pay a credit card or you don't pay a loan, that you're not incarcerated for that? Think about that. Who's ever been incarcerated for not paying back a loan or not paying back a credit card? Why is that not incarceratable or a jailable offense? Don't pay your taxes, what happens then? If you don't pay taxes to the government, what happens? You get arrested. It's illegal to not pay your taxes. But it's not illegal to not pay loans because no court would adjudicate that because the money that you borrowed never existed in the first place. A lawyer would absolutely rip through that. There's no possibility that somebody could get any sort of consequence outside of credit. That's how the credit report is how they try to get you to pay back your loans. If you don't pay your loans back, then your credit gets dinged. It makes it very difficult to buy a car, makes it difficult to buy a house, make large purchases. Obviously, all that is true, and that's where you get the consequence. But if you stop paying your loans, you don't go to jail for that. It's not illegal. Why? Why is that a thing? Why is it not legal? Could it be that the money isn't even real in the first place? Could that be part of it? I don't know. You should think about that. Getting back to this AI, the key points, money as debt. This is important. The majority of the money in a modern economy exists as bank deposits created through this lending process, effectively tying the money supply to credit and debt. Net effect over time. While a new loan creates money, the repayment of the loan's principal effectively destroys that money, removing it from circulation. The money supply expands when the value of new loans issued exceeds the value of existing loans being repaid. Central banks' role. The central bank, like the Federal Reserve, influence this process by setting interest rates and other monetary policy tools to encourage or discourage bank lending, thereby controlling the money supply. The net effect over time is really important to focus on. Why do you think that our government just doesn't give a shit if people really pay back student loans or not? That it's people like me and you that argue about it on social media. Why the government has basically let people for 5 years not pay back student loans. While a new loan creates money, the repayment of the loan's principal destroys that money. So if the loan gets paid back, it reduces the money supply. So when loans stay outstanding, the money supply keeps expanding. So it's in the best interest of people who are expanding the money supply for loans to just be perpetual. Which is why arguing on social media, telling people that they should be paying back their student loans and getting in other people's pockets is retarded. It's absolutely retarded. I don't understand why we have these arguments. People need to learn about how money supply expansion, how loans are created and originated, and understand taxation before they start blowharding on social media and vilifying people that can't afford to pay their student loans back. Understand the argument before you enter it. That's very important because 95% of people on social media talking about student loans have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Absolutely no idea.
So why, when you said, because I agree with you, but I want you to define why are they predatory? I want to see what your version of why you think they're predatory.
It gives institutions of higher learning a free pass to continually set a market price. There is absolutely no barriers and no guardrails for institutions of higher learning to ever have a ceiling for a price. because they have a never-ending supply of funds that are coming to them not in the form of loans, in the form of new money creation. And it's in everybody's best interest, not us. When I say everybody, I'm talking about elites and I'm talking about institutions of higher learning, for the price of college to continue to go up and for loans to continue to be originated and sent out. Paying them back is absolutely irrelevant. And if they do get money back, it is what it is. But you don't think this train is going to keep moving? Like, I think the last time I saw it was like 1.4 trillion in outstanding student loan balances right now and counting.
Yep.
They're in absolutely no, and we're $38 trillion in debt. That's not doing anything to paying off the national debt. People have not paid their student loans for years. Some people haven't paid it back since 2020, 5 years. The economy keeps going. It's not hurting anything. I would argue it's by design.
One of my things with the student loans that I don't like is that if you have the philosophy that we're going to give people money for college, okay, we're gonna approve this. My problem is while they're still working on the degree, they're paying interest, and the payments, they don't have an ability to pay down the principal, because the reason you're giving them the loan is so they can go to the school. So that's one of the things, because that's what the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized, right? Am I getting that right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so in my mind, like, what I don't think is right is that while you're in school, I think the interest rate should be next to nothing. And but once you graduate, and you have to have a period of time, like you can't be in college for 12 years. You get 4 years of loans or 8 semesters or whatever you call it, whatever that term is, that's when it should kick in, and that's when you're expected to start paying back. Theoretically, like once you're out, you're not spending 30 to 40 hours a week in college, so because you're doing other, like, because obviously you have to work too. And well, they should be working in college. Yes, I worked right through college and paid for my stuff. But when I went to the SUNY system in New York State back in the 80s, tuition was like an hour, like a ham sandwich. I mean, it was nothing. I mean, what I made working at a grocery store paid off 90% of what.
You can't do that today.
Yeah, it's impossible.
It's impossible.
But I'm saying, so people are looking at it from the standpoint of when they went to college or when they got a GI Bill loan or whatever it was, and not understanding, like, how, if you want them to go to school to get an education, if that's the philosophy, which I don't think it is, because I think it's a trick. And we're also saying to a 17 to 18-year-old, here's this money so you can go to school, and it's too much. We're not really educating. There's not enough disclosure agreements. Maybe the parents should be involved, but many of the kids that are getting these loans don't have parents to support them or educated parents that can support them to say, hey, this is a bad idea. So they just take it because the college makes it seem like it's going to be great. And maybe there should be things like it only covers tuition and not room and board. I don't know, but that whole system of college loans is predatory. And it's created it's just another way that we're taking this younger generation and putting them behind the 8 ball, in addition to stagnant salaries and inflation and housing rates that are going through the roof. That's my problem with the predatory, with college loans in general. Because they kind of they really make it hard for the kid is going to be paying for that for years and years and years.
It's just a phenomenal scheme for them to continue to increase the money supply, and fooling the American public into believing that it's taxpayer money, so that peer pressure gets people to argue. It's just another division between citizens. Because if you go on social media and you have people that are like saying, "Oh, if you borrow the money, you need to pay it back. I'm paying for your bailout or whatever, or being bailed out by whatever nonsense that they want to say." None of it is true. No taxpayer money is being loaned out. The same way that the bank isn't loaning out your deposits. They're taking your deposits and they're investing them into treasuries. And they're keeping a small fraction of what you put in the bank. The rest, when you go to the bank and get a loan, it's money creation, expanding the money supply. That's what's happening. Next story, which falls into the tax. This is even more into the tax stuff. And you got to be living under a rock to be missing this story. But what's going on in being uncovered in Minnesota is just, it's just next level. I don't want to. There's just so many different things being thrown out there. So I'm not going to make too many generalizations. I'm not going to make too many like stating as fact, because I don't know specifically what the facts could be. What I will say is I'm going to tell everybody to go to the video. Let me try to get it up here so I can show you. It's literally everywhere. You can just put it in a search here. So we'll do that Minnesota fraud video, and you can watch the video for yourself. It's like 45 minutes long. It's right here. Nick Shirley. This is it right here. You put it in, it comes right up. It's about 42 minutes long. It's got over, I think, 120 million views. If you look, 120 million impressions down here. It's also on YouTube. It's just everywhere. And this 23-year-old citizen journalist exposed fraud on a level that's just absolutely mind-blowing in Minnesota. And Minnesota's one state. And the point of this is it's being uncovered in Minnesota. But if you think it's only happening in Minnesota, you're absolutely out of your mind. So here's a tweet from our FBI director, Kash Patel. And he talks about not just Minnesota, but some other things that are going on as well, which I think are relevant to kickstart this conversation that we can have next. Case update, Minnesota fraud scheme. The FBI is aware of recent social media reports in Minnesota. However, even before the public conversation escalated online, the FBI had surged personnel and investigative resources to Minnesota to dismantle large-scale fraud schemes exploiting federal programs. Fraud that steals from taxpayers and robs vulnerable children will remain a top FBI priority in Minnesota and nationwide. To date, the FBI dismantled a $250 million fraud scheme that stole federal food aid meant for vulnerable children during COVID. The investigation exposed sham vendors, shell companies, and large-scale money laundering tied to Feeding Our Future network. The case led to 78 indictments and 57 convictions. It's got a bunch of names there. These criminals didn't just engage in historic fraud, but tried to subvert justice as well. It's got a couple other names. The FBI believes this is just a tip of the... This is important. The FBI believes that this is just the tip of a very large iceberg. We will continue to follow the money and protect children, and this investigation very much remains ongoing. Furthermore, many are also being referred to immigration officials for possible further denaturalization, deportation proceedings where eligible. So there's that by Kash Patel. Also, meanwhile, in California, a 92-page report by the California State Auditor has found that over $70 billion in taxpayer funds have been lost, including $2.5 billion in SNAP fraud, $24 billion on fighting homelessness, and $18 billion for a high-speed rail where not a single track has been laid. And the caption of this is, wait, what, 70 billion with a B? But people like Whistling Diesel will get arrested for $30K in taxes. What the F is even going on? How has this happened? This is insanity. Absolute clown world. So you got the student loan stuff going on. You got the stuff going on in Minnesota. You got this being reported going on in California. That's 2 of the 48 states. You don't think this is happening on some sort of level on every single state? So what's happening on social media right now, J.D. Vance tweets, what's happening in Minnesota is a microcosm of the immigration fraud in our system. Politicians like it because they get power, welfare cheats, like they, yada, yada, yada. And this guy, Jeff Carlson, tweeted something that I'm seeing all over my timeline today. Why exactly should I continue to pay my taxes? And I can show you timeline after timeline of people tweeting something similar. People today are absolutely fed up on the fact that we go to work and we pay 30% of our hard-earned dollars to the federal government for the federal government to have absolutely no care in the world on how those actual taxpayer funds get allocated. And you have fraud in Minnesota where, you know, politicians and possibly immigrants from another country are getting greased. Who knows who's getting greased in California? But there's obvious fraud, waste and abuse, rampant across every single state, and we continue to just pay taxes. And I mean, the Revolutionary War started over 2% taxes. I mean, is this going to be the breaking point, Rich? Do you think this is going to be where people have finally had enough?
Nope.
You don't think so?
No, because in 2 weeks we'll be bored and we'll be talking about something else. I mean, I hate to say it, we move on and we talk about something else because Stranger Things is out now, so the Super Bowl's coming up, and I've said on this pod and a bunch of other pods over the years that I've been doing this shit is that bread and circuses, man. The Roman government understood how to keep the citizens to stop from revolting. They gave them food and they gave them entertainment, and it's called bread and circuses, and it was a philosophy that they established before Christ. That's why the Colosseum exists, because and the baths and museums and all the stuff that they did, because they understood if you keep people busy with other things, then they're less likely to revolt against you. And that was kind of what governments that have lasted for a long time have done. And I just think that enough people. And here's the other thing too: is that no matter what, there were people today, and I didn't know much about the story except I'd heard something about it. I guarantee you, if I spent 20 minutes on Threads and/or X, that I would find people that would defend Minnesota's governor just because they like him. And if it turned out that this was Texas, there would be a bunch of people that will defend the governor. What do they call them? Wheels. For I can't think of his name right now. Because they like Abbott. Because they like him, and we, as a people, and you talk about how well informed we are, we act like these people are our buddies, like they really care about us. And I don't care who it is. I can't think of one politician that on a large level that I ever thought really was trying to do better for me individually. And I think that because it's coming from this current administration, half of the country will think, will think that, it's just a setup or whatever. They won't believe it. And we see it all the time. Every time anything breaks, whether it's Epstein files or whatever, we don't believe it because we like our guy or our guy, and that's what it is. And like you said it in your post, if we spent less time fighting on social media about it and as a group voted and or just protested in the right ways, politicians would start to get nervous, throw out the incumbents, do things that stop. There are so many things that we can do in this country to limit some of these corruptions, and we just don't do it because we get distracted because the Super Bowl's coming out.
I'm going through my timeline. I updated it while you were talking just to see. I find that right here. Why should American citizens be forced to pay taxes when it's not even going back to American citizens? Abolish the IRS.
There we go.
That's Mandy looking at openly calling for an insurrection against the IRS. Who's with me? The Patriot Blonde. Continuing down, looking for more. If you spend $600 on Venmo, Democrats want the transaction reported to the IRS. If Somalians steal $9 billion from taxpayers, Democrats don't even bat an eye. Think about that for a moment. I don't like the partisan stuff because it's both sides. I get it, but for F's sake, just abolish the Federal Reserve, starve the fraud, no more taxes, Sherry Unfiltered. Yeah, I mean, this issue is way bigger than anyone realizes. Trillions of dollars have been stolen from the American people over the past decade due to fraud. There is zero reason we should continue to be paying taxes. They're sovereign, bro. I mean, it's all over the timeline. I mean, it's really there. Like, people are really pissed, as they should be. And I wish and hope for a moment where we can unite and just say enough is enough. Like, we're not paying taxes. We're not filing. I'm not filing taxes this year. How about that? And I know people get money back, and that's a whole scam in and of itself. The fact that you file taxes and get a tax, like, you don't think there's something wrong with that the government's holding on to. They're overtaxing you, like, that you're getting money back because the government took more money from you than they were supposed to take. And that's just a whole nother ridiculous. I mean, I don't understand. Thomas Jefferson said, "The banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs." And that was in the 1700s, dude. Like, that was 250 something years, 240 something years ago, 200 years ago.
Well,
Not
they
much has gotten
understood.
better.
I mean, let's be honest. One of the things that they didn't want is they didn't want a national bank because they saw the problems with the national bank in this is one of the things I do remember learning in elementary or high school, or maybe it was college, about why we didn't have there isn't a the United States Bank of America or whatever it is, not the credit card, but like, you know what I mean? Like, there isn't a national bank there's the Federal Reserve, which is essentially a bank, but we don't have, like, you can go to other countries and there's a national bank. We don't have that. But we have other things that have been implemented. And it worked really well for a really, really long time. And now it's, as we know, we've said it 8 million times, when we went off the rails on this stuff, when we decided spending, like, again, like, my $200 check, my $2,000 check's coming soon, I heard. My $5,000 check's still in the mail. Whatever. But I mean, one of the simple things that happened with taxes is just the fact that when we changed the tax code in, was it 2018, whatever it was, when they changed
17.
When they changed the tax code majorly, and my taxes have gone through the roof because of that. I looked at it. I went back and I looked at what I was paying because I can't deduct anything. I can only take that standard deduction, which isn't very much. So all the things that middle-class people like us do, like buy a house, we can write off the interest. We
can't write off student loan interest like you used to be able to write off.
No, you can't do that. You used to be able to. Because so I decided to improve my house. So I get a home equity loan. I could write off that interest. There were a lot of things that I could do, educational expenses, things that I could do. My donations in this country to non-for-profits are down. Everybody else talking about the government should stop taking care of people. Let the non-for-profits do it because they do it better. Well, yeah, but you fuck the non-for-profits because you changed the tax code. So unless you're a billionaire, there's no reason to donate because you don't get any benefit from it unless you just like doing it because you're a good person. And if you're doing it and you're also willing to get a tax deferment from it, they've taken that away. Now, most people still do it, but it has really impacted non-for-profits, the organizations that parts of our government and parts of our population say, well, the community does a better job of taking care of the poor. Yes, they do. But how are they going to do it if you make it impossible for them to raise money? Not impossible, but very, very difficult to raise money. So a lot of these non-for-profits, and I work with a lot non-for-profits, they have been hurt significantly. They don't have staff like they once had. They're also fighting each other for donations. Everybody's trying to get the better date because there's only so much money to go around. And it's just like, so again, like, these are things that the government has done to us. So I'm much more offended by what they've done to me in my own tax code than the corruption, because I always knew there was corruption. I'm not surprised that there's corruption. There's going to be corruption tomorrow. There'll be different corruption tomorrow.
All this talk today about the Somalian fraud, the California fraud, and the student loan stuff made me think of this video. I want to play it real quick. The viewers can be reminded of this.
Tangled in our anchor chain. Our financial systems are decades old. According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions. We cannot share information from floor to floor in this building because it's stored on dozens of different technological systems that are inaccessible or incompatible.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, was September 10th of 2001. If you were not living under a rock, the very next day, the towers came down and the world completely changed. And, a segment of the internet and the population remembers this, but the overwhelming majority forgot or weren't born or don't know the significance. But this is back when $1 trillion was, today, $1 trillion isn't really that much. We're 37, 38 trillion in debt. Back then, 2.3 trillion was actually more than the deficit at that time. And
Yeah,
we
and I
had
don't know what the budget.
we
I
had
don't know what the annual
2.3
budget
trillion
was.
go
Like, what
missing.
percentage of the budget? I don't remember what the budget was at that time frame. Like how much we were spending a year. I don't remember
The national budget for the
at that time.
for the defense budget was, I mean, we're going to hit 1 trillion for the first time ever now.
Right.
So 20 years ago, I don't know for sure, but I would venture to guess $500 million maybe.
Right.
So this could potentially be 4 times the national budget that just went missing.
Right.
And then the towers came down and we just kind of like, and allegedly, you know, the conspiracy theories are, you know, Tower 7 was where the files would have been for this, where they could have found. I don't know all that stuff. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds and all that. But this happened. This was a real speech that Donald Rumsfeld gave before the towers came down, saying, you know, we're missing $2.3 trillion. Taxpayer money. Back when there was actually taxpayer money. When they weren't printing, I mean, you got to remember 2008 GFC is when the printers went into overdrive. We didn't have overdriving printers in 2001. 2.3 trillion was taxpayer money that we lost. Like it's just it's the amount of shit that, you know, we're soft. I think that's what I'm really trying to say, Rich. I think that's really where I'm trying to like hit the nail on the head. Like we've gotten so soft. Like our arguments and the things we get mad about and the stuff that we like plant our flags in the sand on and the hills that we die on are so dumb. They like have almost no real meaning in the grand scheme of things.
Well, again, if you were in local media today, and I was working all day, so I was not on social media the entire day, so I didn't hear too. Even yesterday wasn't around too much. But if I looked on, and we're a podcast that's broadcast out of Buffalo, Niagara Falls area in Western New York. And if I went on social media today, I guarantee you 40 to 50%, maybe more, of the talk on social media today would have been about what? The Buffalo Bills losing yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? Again, we care more about these other forms of entertainment and things that we do. Like I said, I made a joke about Stranger Things earlier. Again, that's the stuff that people are talking about. They're not talking about this stuff, whether it's the algorithms are geared so we don't find out, whether we just don't care, whether we've accepted the fact that, you know, the government's never going to really be on our side, and maybe that's what they like. Maybe they're happy this way. They're happy this way because they don't need a lot of people to come out and vote for them because they know that there's a high enough percentage that don't care. So as long as they build enough bridges and put in a pipeline and build a school and a playground, that guy will say, you know what, my guy's great. My Congress guy's great. I'm going to vote for him because he brought, a $30,000 fire truck for my community, whatever it is, 30,000, 300,000. And that's how the system works. And we've kind of all decided that's the system. And that's why I know you don't vote.
And I see no time soon where I will. I'm going to show this video. The guidance schools give young people in America is terrible. They are told, like I said earlier, go to college or you'll be a loser, and pressured to sign for student loans without ever being taught even the basics of financial literacy. Does anyone think that's an accident? Let's check out this 2-minute and 37-second video.
The public school system is the system's path. So it takes children down a pipeline to the university system. And to do that, it focuses on grades, standardized testing, and transcripts so that your child could qualify for a loan so that they can get into college. They could then submit a resume, get a job, and spend the next 45 years attempting to climb a corporate ladder. This is the system's path. Because of that, critical thinking, skills, real-world experience are not a priority at all. And memorization and repetition are the priority because they want to establish the habits of an employee. So the question is, what can you do as a parent to counteract that? And the answer is to establish the habits of an entrepreneur. Critical thinking and problem solving, the development of skills, and real-world experience. So from a young age, you could focus on a lot of open-ended STEM projects, fun activities that encourage problem solving. As they get older, you teach them the logical fallacies, which are common manipulations made within arguments. Teach them sourcing, how to get back to primary documents, and make these discernment charts, which allow them to visualize how information is filtered through their brain. Then at the start of every school semester, have them list 3 skills that they would like to learn. 1, 2, 3, and pick one to learn that semester. You're not only allowing them to take ownership over their education, but imagine how skilled they'll be and how many skills they'll have by the time they're 18. And then at the start of every school semester, have them write down 3 business events that they'd like to hold. This will get them the experience. 1, 2, 3. And then you guide and challenge them to plan and hold the business event. And if you do this every semester, imagine how much experience they'll have by the time they're 18. Do this every semester, and you will establish the habits of a free and independent person. Check out my private homeschool community. And Cubs to Bears.
What do you think of that, Rich? You got the most schooling.
Yeah, I mean, I was a
teaching
teacher for
experience.
31 years, and I'm not a big fan of education in the way we do things. However, I will say in the last 5 to 10 years, well, I've been out for 3. So, yeah, for the last 10 years, there has been a push by many districts as people in his age bracket become powerful in the people that are becoming superintendents nowadays, and I'm not talking guys in their 50s and 60s, the guys that are and gals that are coming out to be superintendents and principals and teachers that are younger have that mindset of what he's saying. So schools are definitely changing. I do think that many of the parents don't understand those changes. So I'm glad that he was talking to parents about that. I do feel like schools understand that became a thing, like getting rid of trade schools and those types of things, and where the jobs really are, and not and doing a better job making sure students are not taking some of these loans. So I do think that is changing. So I don't think he was wrong. I think there's a couple things that maybe he's slightly behind the times on education a little bit, because they do spend a lot more time teaching critical thinking. They do. They also spend a lot more time getting you experiences. I had a very, very, very good athlete my last year who he was getting college things to go play this sport at a college, and he wanted to be an electrician. So he went to our program where they get internships, and they paired him up with an electrician, and he got certified as an electrician in 2 years. So he never used any money to get a scholarship to go play a sport at college. He went and became an electrician. He was a working electrician. Unfortunately, he passed away. But the point is, there are students that are recognizing, I want to work with my hands. I do want to do critical thinking things. I want to problem solve. I want to build bridges. I want to do those things. And I don't necessarily believe in the system that's a 4-year school thing. So I even feel like our colleges are starting to come up with certifications and stuff. I think part of it is because COVID exposed public education and college education, college education, private and public, I said it wrong, is a bit of a scam because of the way they fund the budget. They fund the budget based on the people going there to rent the dorms. And then when people were told they couldn't stay in the dorms, parents was like, well, if I'm not staying in the dorms, why am I paying for the dorms? Like if I went to a hotel and I rented a hotel for 5 nights, but I only could stay for 3, I probably wouldn't pay for the other 2 nights, right?
Yeah, logically.
And they're saying, well, why do I have to pay for the other the other month? Why do I have to pay if I'm not getting this service? Well, we already have the money. And then parents started to realize, and kids started to realize, oh, and then suddenly, like, you'll see the way colleges are doing budgets and stuff, and the way they're lowering some of the cost of the rent, but they're raising the cost on the tuition side, and then they're even making people that are graduate students pay more. Graduate school used to be the cheapest. Now it's the most expensive because they're like, well, so they're changing their formulas because they realize the scam of a 4-year education. I don't need that like I used to. I can go for a certification. So, but he's right. I don't want to fight him on minuscule points of what he made. I do think education in general understands they have a problem. They're starting to adjust because the public is reacting to that. Which is, if we did that with the government, we'd be in better shape. And I apologize, I talked way
No,
too
it's
much.
fine. The point that I think I really agree with him, that I shout from the rooftops needs to change, is we indoctrinate students with an employee
sure.
mindset. We
For
do
sure.
not give them the skills to be entrepreneurs or bosses for that. I mean, middle level management is about the highest that we
Right.
give you a skill set wise. We don't give students the skills to be critical thinkers. And the fact that like tests should be collaborative. Like, what I don't understand why in 2025 we haven't figured that shit out yet. Like, why you can't, like, you have rows of people taking tests still. Like, what is that shit? It's so stupid. Like,
Well, and again,
you should be
how
collaborating with
many-
the whole classroom to figure out the answer to the problem.
How many times as an adult have you taken a test or had to do something where the time was essential? Maybe problem solving in a crisis, but 99% of the time, you got months or weeks or days to complete a task. If you say to your boss, "Well, I he's not going to say, well, you have 8 hours to do it. He's going to be like, it has to be done by Tuesday. So if you can't finish it by 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock when your shift leaves, guess what? You stay till it's done. You take the work home. But we've decided that like things like the SATs, they're measured based on a time frame. Like, why should I take the SAT in 3 hours?
What about
Why can't I? If I could do it in 5 hours and get a better score, why can't I have 5 hours to take that stupid test? Which is also indicates nothing except how you're going to do in the next standardized test you do. They predict nothing, and that's why, to be honest, since COVID, SATs, APs in general, the enrollment's gone down because it's not worth it's people are realizing that it's not worth it anymore. There's other ways to get college credit while you're in high school and do that instead of spending all this time and money on an SAT, because a lot of colleges aren't even looking at the SATs anymore.
You want to hear my wild conspiracy theory that I think is a conspiracy? I think it's actually true. I think the explosion of mental health and anxiety in this country directly correlates with George Bush, No Child Left Behind 2004, changing curriculums, and instead of making things at work what we're suggesting to be more collaborative, it was more rigid, where when you're taking a test on your own and you're under pressure to do all these things on your own, you get extremely anxious, you get extremely depressed, and it's all on you, instead of making it less stressful, less more on you, more collaborative, and then you'd have more skills in regards to working together. But No Child Left Behind in 2004, instead of making things better, made it completely worse.
Well, what they did was, and this was the thing, and again, I was a teacher during this time frame.
I was actually at that time too.
And remember, like, if you were a teacher and you said anything against it, whatever everybody
Of
say to you,
course.
you just don't want to be judged.
Yeah.
Like, I'm judged
It's
every
ridiculous.
day at my job.
It's ridiculous.
And I'm like, no, I'm fighting for kids. Like, these tests are way too stressful. Like, I read, when I first started teaching math in the 90s, there was a book called Math Anxiety. And it's still a term out there. And it was, again, this was probably published like 88, 89. I read that book when I was in college. And I remember, like, I taught math for 9 years, 11 years, and depending on what the courses were. But I remembered that book, and I implemented that book to find ways to reduce the anxiety, because I said, tests are already hard enough. Why are you making them so? Now we're making the kid so worried that he's going to be a loser if he fails it. And that was the thing. We were taking kindergartners, first graders, and second graders, giving them standardized test after standardized test, and all these goofy things. And state curriculums and federal curriculums are just ridiculous, like unpacking curriculum and posting it on walls and all this other crazy stuff, instead of understanding what education is supposed to be about. It's about building a person and giving them marketable skills. But remember, public education was revamped to fit the warehouse model, the manufacturing model. That's why we had bells and we had whistles and a lunch break and all those things, because we wanted the kids to be indoctrinated when they were in public schools, so how they could work in a factory and they could work in a sweatshop. And that's why they got so mad in the 50s when unions became a thing, because people started to stand up for themselves. And that is kind of like, that there's a lot of things education's a disaster in this country. It's not because of the federal government. It's because of every government. It's because of corporations. It's because of Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation and the way he paid. Like, he made money off of all those standard tests because his company made those tests and sold those tests. And the worst state in this country in terms of education, where it sets the trends, it's not some liberal state. It's Texas. So, don't go after the liberal teachers. The states and the testing and everything comes from the Republican state. So, again, I'm not saying one party is better than the other, but, education is and that's one of the reasons why, I'm not a big fan of education. Because I tried to do my best for 30 years, but I saw that the system's a disaster. And it's a disaster for 1,000 reasons, not because of LGBTQ stuff.
And there's no reason, or there's no motivation for anybody to fix it. Like Trump said, we're going to abolish the Department of Education. It's like the same as we're going to abolish Obamacare. Okay, Obamacare sucks. What's your solution? We're going to abolish the Department of Education. Okay, the Department of Education sucks, but what's your solution? If you're going to eliminate things, you have to have a plan to do something. What's the plan?
Can't handle the void. So who's going to make sure that there are certain regulations that are happening in education? And the problem is the reason why they wanted a Department of Education is because if you look at the level, if you want to use testing scores as any indication, because it's all we really have, compare certain states. And some states are pretty darn good and some states are awful. Then it goes down to neighborhoods. And what a surprise. The poorest districts don't do well. Why? Well, we know why. There's lots of thousands of reasons, but we don't want to address them because we have formulas in New York State for funding, and it prevents. You have $100, let's say, and you have $100, and it is set up in such a way that no matter what, no matter where you need the money or not, whether your tax base can support it or not, you get X number of dollars. And it's designed in such a way to make sure rich districts get a lot of extra money that they don't need because they don't have the special ed services that the poor districts have. And it's an unfair formula. Many school districts sued. Solid evidence, and the states and the courts just said, yeah, that's my district. My district's the rich one, so no. We're not siding with you. You've got some points, but we'll leave it to the Department of Education to fix this. They didn't come out. They refused to say that the case had merit because they knew that it would force certain districts to not be able to just have Cadillac everything for their kids and stuff. And it just, because again, it's the corruption. We know it's corruption.
It's just sad. There's just no real desire to fix our education system, and it all starts with education. I mean, we all go through this broken, dilapidated, terrible system where they don't teach us basic living skills. We have outdated practices, and we learn about things that have absolutely no value in adulthood, and we just continue to rinse and repeat, and we wonder why we have to have a president that has a MAGA agenda of making America great again because of how shitty things have gotten. And that's because of everything, not because of one party being in power over the other. It's because we just do things terrible. We don't do things efficiently. We're not efficient in this country. We have so many things that we do. And again, this podcast is about the money. The money is absolutely broken, and everything spiders off the broken money, which is why we're Bitcoiners and why we want to change the money to change the world. And it's just we talk a good game. We complain very, very well on social media, but nobody comes up with an actual plan for a solution to any of this. A couple of things. We'll end this just a little bit early. A couple of things to end this on. I got a tweet up here right now. The Patriot Blonde, who came up on my timeline earlier about an insurrection against the IRS, he tweeted, "Earlier I called for an insurrection against the IRS. I was wrong to call for such a hostile, dangerous act against them, and I apologize. I'm calling for an insurrection against the entire fucking government. Burn the motherfucker down. Let's fucking go." I don't disagree. And then this tweet that we'll end the podcast on, I just wholeheartedly want people to take a look at and really just digest it because there's so much truth in it. It's Thomas Massey. I don't know, feel how you will about him. He's on the outs with the Republicans now. I guess every Republican hates him because he's not pro-MAGA. So, say what you will about his future. But he tweeted, the federal income tax was unconstitutional for most of our country's existence, which is fact. The founders of this country would have never agreed to it. We should repeal it. The current iteration of income tax was 1913. So 1776, I believe from 1776 to 83 is when we got our first president. Like we had that constitutional Congress type thing for a couple of years where we had constitutional presidents. Yeah, whatever that was. But when we got Washington as the first president in the mid 1780s until 1913, we did not have federal income tax. Full stop. So more than half of the entire existence of this great country, we operated without federal income tax. And now we have federal income tax in some states where people pay up to half of the money that they earn, which is, I don't know what else you call that, but straight robbery. I mean, if I go into a grocery store, grocery shop, and you have a cart and I take half your cart and leave, is that not robbery? Am I not robbing half your groceries? But we accept it with our hard-earned pay. It's just, I don't understand. And I'm very happy, very glad to see my timeline filled with people calling for the abolishment of the IRS. But Rich, maybe I'm with you. I hope that this actually has teeth, and next week the next story doesn't sweep this all under the rug. This is a good time, being that it's the end of the year and people will be doing their taxation stuff very soon in the next month or two. This would be a great time to start a movement where we're not filing our taxes this year. We're just abolishing. We're not doing it. We're putting our foot down, and especially those of you that owe taxes, don't file. If you do your taxes and owe, everybody that owes taxes this year, don't file. I mean, if you're getting some back, you're gonna need the money. I'm not gonna tell people not to, fund things to survive. But if you owe taxes this year and you're filing and you see that you owe, we should all band together that are gonna owe taxes and put our middle fingers up to the government and say, here's your taxes for 2025. Again, as we have done 116 times before today, it got really spicy today. If you go back and watch this podcast, please give me some feedback. I'm interested to see how other people feel on how we talked about taxes and how we feel about the student loan thing. As always, don't trust, verify. Thanks for watching. Peace.